what Israel has done by initiating this war and killing over 600 Iranians, almost mostly civilians, is set back the regime change plan, possibly decades.
So recently, Max Blumenthal went on Judge Napolitano's show to talk a little bit about the ramifications of Israel's failed war with Iran. Why it failed, what are the ramifications for the United States, how this impacts Trump and the future of geopolitics. Max is one of the best journalists in the world, so let's watch and let's react. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
Max Blumenthal, welcome here, my dear friend. When Donald Trump ordered the bombing on Saturday night and Sunday morning, depending on which time zone you're in, over Iran, did he and Netanyahu know that Trump was bombing empty tunnels and that the nuclear centrifuges and enriched material had been removed?
Well, whether they did or not, Trump sought to convince Americans and his base that they were destroying Iran's nuclear program in a Top Gun style operation with the porn-themed name Midnight Hammer. And it's turned out to be Operation Midnight Scammer, as what Iran even told us days before, which is that it had moved its enriched uranium stockpile out of Fordo, has turned out to be confirmed by a Defense Intelligence Agency assessment, along with other intelligence officials who are blowing the whistle on this scam, as well as Israeli pundits speaking in broad daylight on Israeli networks, that this was just simply a symbolic strike by Trump, giving in to Israeli manipulation, which was designed to draw the U.S. into a much larger regime change theater. And I heard that from a Trump official, an insider, who was familiar with a lot of these discussions on how Trump was manipulated almost exclusively through the Mossad and Israeli briefers, pushing weapons of mass destruction deceptions that would be laughed at.
Yeah, this was 2003 all over again in so many ways, and I love how this is Operation Midnight Scammer. It's known through satellite imagery that Iran moved a lot of their uranium out of the sites that were bombed. Now, I'll let the Trump administration celebrate this as an optics victory, propaganda victory, that they actually, dismantled the nuclear weapons program, because that probably lessens the chance that they're going to drum up Iran as a threat that we need to bomb immediately again in the future. Don't get me wrong, the neocons and Netanyahu will try to do that. But yeah, this doesn't do anything but incentivize Iranians to actually get a nuclear weapon. That's for sure. And it certainly doesn't improve relations between the United States and Russia, too. And Russia is an ally with Iran. So, yeah, I'm with Blumenthal. It does look like the uranium has been preserved. So this attack really did nothing. Actually, it just killed innocent Iranians, and innocent Israelis died because of it. For essentially status quo, no changes, all it really did was prove that the Iranians acted in a way completely to the contrary of how the neocons and the Israel lobby said they would. They'd try to wipe Israel off the map or try to destroy as many U.S. soldiers as possible. Well, that didn't happen, and it's because of Iranian restraint that actually this war didn't get escalated into a regime change operation the neocons wanted.
By the American public, which were laughed at, which is why Donald Trump didn't even bother making the case to Americans, as George W. Bush did on Iraq, that the smoking gun could soon become a mushroom cloud. And so now nobody believes him except for the biggest Trump cultists, and even the intellectual architects of America First, like Tucker Carlson and Steve Bannon, have accused Trump of betraying their principles and are portraying him as a kind of orange McCain.
Yeah, I was surprised to the extent somehow to the extent of which so many of the hardcore Trump supporters really lined up in opposition to this. Marjorie Taylor Greene was one. Tucker Carlson was one. Matt Walsh was one. There were many people that had supported Trump that were very much against this, and more credit to them. That's very good to see. However, he's right. A lot of the Trump loyalists, I saw this on social media, just dug in their heels to whatever new narrative was being generated to support whatever Trump was doing or being manipulated into doing. It went from, we're not going to go to war and we're not going to have a new war, to Iran can't have a nuclear weapon, to Israel's doing this on their own, to we bombed them and it was actually awesome and it worked, to regime change. Trump himself floated that vernacular out on Truth Social, and every step of the way, a lot of people did support it. But Max is right.
Nice phrase, Orange McCain. I keep thinking of that phrase from Tom Woods. No matter who you vote for, you end up with John McCain. You are quite right, Max. There was no serious effort to persuade the American people because there was no evidentiary basis with which to make that case.
What Israel has done by initiating this war and killing over 600 Iranians, mostly civilians, is set back the regime change plan, possibly decades. There has been a huge rally around the flag effect in Iran. Everyone I met while I was in Iran is now telling me that people who have deep grievances with the government supported the war, were out in the streets chanting for the war. And Iranians have come together. They feel like it's another revolutionary moment. The hybrid weapons of Western and Israeli regime change channels like Iran International, BBC, Persia, the Western media are totally discredited inside Iran right now. And so Netanyahu has achieved that. And then finally, in the US, Netanyahu has achieved the disdain of a part of the American public that he always counted on as the most reliable part of his base, which is Republicans. According to a new CNN poll, only 20% of Republicans under the age of 45 were enthusiastic about Trump's strike. And, look at what their influencers are saying. They're just disgusted with the whole thing. So,
yeah, I guess that's the silver lining here. This was totally senseless, but if this really is going to change or take regime change off the table for a long time in Iran, both the potential of that happening internally or externally because of how this damages Netanyahu and the Likud party and the neocons that push this, that's a good thing. And I think that's why, these deranged neocon ghouls, as Tucker Carlson calls them, like Mark Levin, is melting down on Twitter over this. And John Bolton did that as well. They're considering this a job only half done. This is a total abandonment of the foreign policy they wanted. But all the people that wanted this were, never Trump Republicans in 2016. And man, I'm glad we got this off ramp, and I think this whole thing was a disaster that will only encourage Iran to get a nuclear weapon. But if this takes regime change off the table, that's a very good thing, no matter how you slice it. And I respect Max's view on that. It's a little bit different of a take than many of the other, videos I react to and cover.
So politically and psychologically, Iran has won this round, and Israel, it's a self-inflicted blow by Israel.
Chris has just captured from about 30 minutes ago, President Trump and Secretary Hegseth becoming irritated and defensive during the president's presser in Brussels.
Let's see it.
I can't wait to see it, so we're going to watch it together. Chris?
Let's do it.
If you look at the dates, it's just a few days after it happened. Sir. So they didn't see it. They said it may be very severe.
Understood. Do you have a message for the intelligence community, though, in terms of unvarnished information getting to you, that it's not?
I don't really have a message. I would say issue the report when you know what happened. I wouldn't say that it could be severe or maybe not. They use the word severe. It could be severe or maybe it's not. So people like you picked up and said, oh, it's not severe. No, the report was not a complete report. Yeah, the message was probably wait till you know the answer before you.
And sir, did you not have a public component to your Zelensky meeting for a tactical reason with President Putin?
Let him answer this.
Hello, Mr. Secretary.
Yeah. There's a reason the president calls out fake news for what it is. These pilots, these refuelers, these fighters, these air defenders, the skill and the courage it took to go into enemy territory flying 36 hours on behalf of the American people and the world to take out a nuclear program is beyond what anyone in this audience can fathom. And then the instinct of CNN, the instinct of the New York Times is to try to find a way to spin it for their own political reasons to try to hurt President Trump or our country. They don't care what the troops think. They don't care what the world thinks. They want to spin it to try to make him look bad based on a leak. Of course, we've all seen plenty of leakers. And what do leakers do? They have agendas. And what do? Do they share the whole information or just the part that they want to introduce? And when they introduce that preliminary a preliminary report that's deemed to be a low assessment. Do you know what a low assessment means? Low confidence in the data in that report. And why is there low confidence? Because all of the evidence of what was just bombed by 12 30,000-pound bombs is buried under a mountain, devastated and obliterated.
Well, actually, a lot that was targeted was taken out of Fordo, though, as well. So it's funny to see Eggs just sell this thing, man. He is a propagandist, and hey, if he didn't want regime change in Iran, I'll give him credit for that. But he, is just selling this thing as if it was such a great victory, and that everyone who has questions about this thing, despite the narrative shifting so many times, is just CNN or the New York Times. It's just, that's a little bit absurd to me.
So if you want to make an assessment of what happened at Fordo, you better get a big shovel and go really deep, because Iran's nuclear program is obliterated. And somebody somewhere is trying to leak something to say, oh, with low confidence, we think maybe it's moderate. Those that dropped the bombs precisely in the right place know exactly what happened when that exploded. And you know who else knows? Iran. That's why they came to the table right away, because their nuclear capabilities have been set back beyond what they thought were possible because of the courage of a commander-in-chief who led our troops, despite what the fake news wants to say.
But you're not disputing the report said what it said.
Blumenthal's laughing too. I'm a little bit torn on this one because, part of me, my channel is set up just for the truth, really, to just see what's happening in the world, especially in terms of geopolitics and other forms of politics. You guys know the drill that watch this channel. But in this case, I want to tell the truth. It doesn't look like they did get the uranium, but I also think it's better for the cause of anti-war activists if people believe that these weapons were blown up. Now, eventually it probably won't matter. Netanyahu and the neocons are going to clamor for regime change there again, and Iran will be 2 weeks from acquiring a nuclear weapon again, just like they've been for my entire lifetime since I was a kid, because that's all Netanyahu says. But let's see what Max says about this.
I mean, that's a political statement if ever I heard one. There's very little truth in what he said.
Yeah.
He's made a fool of himself in an international forum with an enormous audience watching.
Well, he didn't present any facts. He didn't present any evidence. He didn't deny the assessment.
He's upset that the leakers work for him. It's the Defense Intelligence Agency whose job it is to evaluate this that leaked, according to him, the absence of success because of the planning ahead of time by the Iranians. No one's saying the bombs didn't hit. No one's saying they didn't hit their target. Right. No one's saying that this is all a fake.
Or that the American pilots weren't courageous to do what they did or whatever. That was totally, just deflecting what was actually being asked and what really is tangible or useful about this line of questioning. It really was a deflection.
But there was nothing there to hit except an empty tunnel.
Exactly. And it is possible, actually, to reinforce to the point where those MOPs aren't going to actually destroy what's buried beneath the ground. It is possible. But Maxar satellite imagery showed days before a long line of dump trucks pulling up to the Fordo facility. Iran openly announced that it had removed its 60% enriched uranium stockpile. Rafael Grossi, the heavily biased IAEA director, even on Fox News, said he doesn't know where the stockpile is. Pete Hegseth is claiming that the entire nuclear program was destroyed.
I hope they run with this propaganda forever in a way. I'm so against regime propaganda, but we'll ultimately see how much they truly believe that they dismantled Iran's nuclear weapon program. And to the extent that this was mission accomplished, George W. Bush on the aircraft carrier under that banner, just in regard to Iran, this time instead of Iraq. We'll see how long they run with this, or how long it takes for the neocons to, break a new story, breaking news. Iran actually did smuggle out the highly enriched uranium. They do have the capacity to build a nuclear bomb, because I think Netanyahu is going to run with that really, really quickly. I think it might be within a year, actually. So we'll have to see if the Trump administration continues to sell this lie, because it does seem like they got the uranium out of there, and this is all deflection and, just stupid responses by Hegseth that don't address what actually happened. We're not talking about the relative courage of American forces to do the job, or how many bombs got dropped, or how big the bomb was. They were 30,000 pounds or whatever. So, yeah, we'll have to see how this goes. This is just an interesting tangent to the whole story, and how long they sell it is actually really consequential in U.S. foreign policy, because the whole pretext was, hey, they're close to getting a nuclear weapon, so this is why we need to intervene. And then that was step by step when the goalposts were changed.
According to the DIA assessment, the U.S. even failed to destroy the underground Isfahan facility. It's not just Fordo. And there are facilities all across Iran where that uranium, if Iran chooses, could be turned into a nuclear weapon to establish deterrence against the coming and inevitable future Israeli attacks. It doesn't require a vast facility as long as there are plans and centrifuges to produce a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, you can be guaranteed, as long as they maintain any form of nuclear energy, which all countries essentially do, all countries even remotely in the first world, and that includes Iran, have a nuclear energy program. As long as they're enriching uranium even to 3 to 5%, Netanyahu is going to talk about regime change. He's going to float it out there. They're going to keep talking about death to America chants to try to draw the U.S. in, and maybe U.S. presidents in the future that might not end up having as much restraint as Trump showed in the end. And don't get me wrong, I don't think Trump showed a ton of restraint here. This was a good off-ramp in some ways, but really the Iranians showed more restraint in not reprising that attack in a serious way to do damage. In fact, they tipped Trump off to it, and it was just to save face domestically. They had to respond to the U.S. attack in some way, and they took the restrained route, the exact route that all these war hawks said would never happen. So, yeah, we'll see what happens.
This is what Donald Trump has done by falling for the Israeli manipulation. He's moved Iran outside the inspection regime permanently. The IAEA is kicked out of Iran, and the Iranian parliament has passed legislation to do that, and Iran may move to leave the NPT in order to establish deterrence once and for all. Meanwhile, this scandal will only grow. The intelligence, so-called intelligence community, is disgusted with Trump's manipulation of intelligence, and the media that works hand in glove with them is going to seek to use this to punish Trump for weeks and weeks. And I don't think they're going to have anything to come back with except more dodgy Israeli intelligence.
Yeah, I totally agree with Max's last point. I think it was probably his best point in the entire video, is that IAEA inspectors are out of there now, and there seems to be no chance that there's going to be a new JCPOA now. Iran's not going to trust the United States after this. Who would trust our government after this? It's a criminal government to engage in this, and especially to show the world with all the headlights on this that even the U.S. is willing to, just completely throw its stated foreign policy goals under the rug for the sake of Israel, to throw the chance of having a new JCPOA that might have been more advantageous to Trump in some ways, so he could say, oh, mine was better than Obama's, Obama's was weak, I led with strength. You know how he would sell it, right? We know Trump well enough to know what he would say about it if they did that. But the U.S. was willing to shelve that just for the sake of this strike, of this gambit that Netanyahu played to try to draw the U.S. in to a regime change operation, which is his endgame. It is what he wants. He hasn't been very shy about that, by the way, as I've covered many times on this channel. So that's what we're left with. If you're the Iranian regime, you have unlimited incentive now to get a nuclear weapon. And that is about the worst thing imaginable if your earnest goal was actually to disable their nuclear weapons program, which I think was just the pretext to a lot of these people's thirst for, military ambition and regime change. But I do want to hear what you guys think. Let me know down below. Do you think that Max is right about this? Is there anything he's missing? Is there anything I'm missing as far as ramifications that will result from this. I want to hear from you on that. Subscribe to Judge Napolitano. He's awesome. Great guests like Max on there. Like this channel, subscribe to it, and please consider becoming a YouTube member or a Patreon patron to support me, and I'd very much appreciate that. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.